in Central Europe.
I see a question here, several questions in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it as well. And I think what I'm going to say next, to some extent, speaks to the second question from Anne-Marie Getz.
You're good.
So yeah,
I'm not so good. Yes, I confessed, to the audience, I confessed to Lala and Maria that I'm not so good at that, and I asked Lala to monitor the question and answer. But go.
Yeah. So anti-gender or the discourse of so-called gender ideology is something that has been developing for a while, but became particularly visible starting in 2012 in this area. And it basically combines localized, in the case of, Poland, Hungary, Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, I can go on. Germany is another very important place, and it's actually a leading place for the anti-gender conceptualizations. Kind of anxiety about globalization, anxiety about immigration and the displacement of native people by immigrants who also happen to be not as white as the native. That doesn't happen. I'm being facetious, obviously. There's racism involved in that. A kind of growing distrust about the solutions that the West is providing, because this is at a period of economic downturn, right? And some of the very serious limitations that the EU was posing at that time with regard to certain kinds of development and access to resources, if we remember correctly, right? So all these things are factors from the outside, together with the unfortunate timing of the growth of LGBTQ activism in this area. I'm saying unfortunate not because there's anything wrong with it, on the contrary, but because the growth of that discourse and its visibility happened to coincide with a period that many people, male politicians, but also average people, sort of living in these countries, at a period that they're experiencing as a period of loss, of anxiety, economically, especially, even though they'd become part of the EU, and now they're supposed to be doing better economically because there's more access to education, the labor market, goods, and everything's great, except it's not, right? So at this period of looking for external and internal enemies,
except it's not for many people, even as it is true for some people.
Right. So yes, you're also talking about a kind of polarization internally, in terms of economic opportunities that have to do with education, that have to do with age, where in your life cycle you're caught at that point.
Right.
And so, in search for explanations and for internal enemies, in addition to the external enemies, so globalization, who is globalization, and those darn immigrants, oh yes, somebody can point towards, then you have gay people like, oh, okay, so here's this new problem that we have, which of course is not understood in any kind of systematic fashion, because there's no sociological studies that look broadly at, what percentage of the population self-identify this way. What does it mean that they do? None of that is part of what's happening. What's happening is that both of the religious leadership of these denominations found in the writings of people like Gabriele Kubi, who's German and Catholic, and who was being propped up by both the previous and the current Pope as, a morally upright, totally appropriately verbalizing anxieties of the Catholic Church scholar. She's not really a scholar, but okay. So her work got translated into a whole bunch of East European languages. People started reading it and started picking up on this language about gender ideology, identifying that with queer theory and LGBTQ activism. And of course, without any kind of self-reflection on what religious dogma is with regard to gender norms, and whether that itself is not the gender ideologies that we've been living with for, thousands of years at this point. So that was a way to deflect basically a kind of critique of other things that are not working. They were taken out by politicians because, it was an easy way to, again, deflect any kind of tension from one's own ability to engage with real problems in real time, right? So I think it gained purchase because of these variety of factors, and it's become, in some ways, a dominant ideology in places like Hungary and Poland with regard to the ruling parties.